Welcome everyone to Reaching the Peak when climax doesn't come easily. I know we have a lot of therapists on this call who signed up who are interested in helping people with this, and this is going to be very valuable to you because what we've learned, what we found out in our researches and our actual investigations, I want to say hands-on, but it was hands-off the whole time, hands-on investigations you're going to be able to apply to your clients. And we also have people who either are struggling with climax and orgasm or who know someone who is. So, welcome everyone. Nothing is worse than not feeling alive, to have that vague or not so vague sensation that your life is not what it should be. And we do all kinds of things to feel alive. And however, the most key things to feeling alive are things that are going on inside us and often have little to do with what's going on in the outside world. We have a lot of extreme ways to get great sensations and to become alive, but they all filter through our body. So our ability in the body to be focused on what's happening and to understand that and to process that is intimately connected to how much we're actually experiencing in this journey called life. So today I want to share with you one woman's story. Like 25 million women in America, she had struggled with achieving orgasm. She tried all kinds of things and nothing helped until she found this program that we're presenting today. My name is Ryan Orrock. If you haven't met me, my mission is to help all people everywhere have more pleasure. I'm very happy to introduce and welcome Kate. Hello, Kate.
Hello.
So Kate is our brave interviewee who's discovered new levels of her own personal pleasure, and I'm going to be asking. Oh, and we have somebody else on the call. Would you like James? Is that right?
Yes, you may hear James. Yes, you may hear James from time to time.
Okay.
I'm trying to get him some food to keep him under wraps.
All right. James is with us as well, so he may chime in from time to time with his mommy. So welcome, James. And Sunny is also on the call. Hello, Sunny.
Good morning, everyone.
Sunny's been the guide and facilitator through Kate's process. And so I'm just going to be asking questions and letting Kate talk about her experience. And Sunny, feel free to chime in as well with whatever you think is important about where we're at. But I just want to hear about your experience, Kate, your life, know more about you, and talk about this journey. So the first thing that I just want to know is, who are you? A little bit of introduction and background for people who are listening.
Well, my name is Kate. I'm a 34-year-old mom now, or wife and mother, now stay-at-home mom. I used to work in the legal profession, which was kind of stressful and always kind of like a A-type personality where it was go, go, go. And I don't know, my husband always says that I'm like very one-sided, or as far as like when I have a goal, that's all I see is the goal that I'm going for, as opposed to like the world going around me. And I seem to put a lot of stress on myself as far as to get things done and to achieve different goals or, things that I want in life. And one thing that always kind of had eluded me through my life, which I didn't really talk about much, was achieving orgasm. And it was, even from experimenting with sex at a young age and moving forward, it was always kind of something where I was like, it's going to happen one day. It's just, not right now.
So starting there, what was your experience like when you're in an intimate situation? Did you feel pleasure? Were things fairly numb? Where were things when you kind of began, early 20s? What was happening?
I enjoyed the act of sex. I enjoyed like foreplay and everything. It just seemed like it would kind of rise and rise, and it would just stop. I would just either plateau out. And it was weird. With another partner, it would just kind of like, it would seem like I'd get to a point and I could just never get over a peak or like, to that spot. Where when I was by myself, it was almost, I would hit like a point where it would become too overwhelming, and I would almost think it was going to hurt. And so I would stop myself because I was afraid of the peak. Well, which is kind of like a weird thing. I could never seem to push myself past it. And then when I would get too overwhelmed and I would stop. So it was always frustrating growing up because everybody, your girlfriends and friends are like, oh, orgasm, oh, everything is wonderful. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Not exactly. I know what that is. And, kind of silently just dealing with the fact of going, oh, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get to this point? And people are like, oh, you know how it is when you're by yourself and you know how things work. And I honestly couldn't tell anybody like how it was, or my partner how things worked, because I didn't know. I couldn't translate the feeling that I was feeling to be able to tell what was and what wasn't working. So like I was as lost as they were. Right. I was, I was just as lost as I would say my partners were. And it was embarrassing because, it's for me, for both sides of it. I couldn't talk to my friends about it because they all, as far as they were sharing, were all, getting off and having great sex. And with my partner, it was hard for me to talk about it with them. I was always very honest though. I never faked orgasms. I was just like, hey, it just, it's not you, it's me. I'm not having them. And I always just kind of thought that when I was with the right person, it would happen, or I equated it to when my feelings were really invested, then it would be there type of thing. Just, I was hopeful that it would happen one day, and I just didn't know how to get around it. It was embarrassing, but it was like something that I owned. And I just dealt with, and I just figured that one day it would happen, and put a lot of stock into that. But as time went on, it just got more and more frustrating.
So you're married,
because
right?
Like all the milestones. I am married.
Okay. So how long have you been married?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. So when you got married, like what effect has this condition had on your marriage or your intimate life with your partner?
Well, I mean, it's frustrating because, or in the beginning it was, we just like experimented a lot, and he was like, I'm going to do everything I can to, be the one to get you off, and and then it seemed like he would get frustrated too, and it would kind of just fizzle out, and then we'd get into like a routine, and then there was other things that happened in the marriage. So our with a marriage, like the sex life would kind of ebb and flow, where sometimes we would be hot and heavy, and other times we would just get caught up in work and other things would take over and take precedence, and our sex life would fall behind. And then when we'd get back in, we would start trying more and more extreme things, because I kept thinking that it was just, I needed like more stimulation or more craziness or something more extreme to get me to that edge, thinking that it was something that was lacking as far as like external stimulation.
Right. Can you give us some examples of things you tried, if you're comfortable with
that? We've tried different various sex toys. We've tried BDSM, doing submission, different various types of kink, whether it's playing with like candle wax, a little bit of like bondage play, being tied up, sensory deprivation, role playing, to even going kind of like outside of the marriage with like swinging, where we never like did full swinging, because we were committed our marriage, and we're also in a conceiving stage of wanting to have a family. But we've kind of used other people to try and heighten our pleasure as far as like be more voyeuristic, I guess, and feeding off the energy of others. So we would try even that aspect of it. And it would, because I mean, as you're learning, we're very open sexually as far as communicating and like with each other and trust each other, to the point where, we're willing to try other things. But then there would be times where it would get frustrating, and we'd have to pull back from it, where, we'd be out of control as far as, or he always said I was like crazy and I'd throw myself into everything. And then it seemed that if it was getting too out of control, I would fight to control it, and I'd pull back, and then we'd stop doing it. That it seemed like whenever I would let go, and start to really enjoy something, it would almost freak me out about how it was going. Like I felt like I was losing control, and I would fight for that control and pull back.
And
I
so,
kept thinking that it was something outside of me that needed to be added,
right.
as opposed to looking within myself.
So were you actually interested in trying all these different things, or was that they were just sort of a means to an end?
I would say it was kind of a little bit of both,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously it was an interest that appealed to both of us at the time. I mean, I would say that it wasn't like, my husband didn't come home one day and was like, hey, let's throw other people into the mix. It was more my kind of like, well, let's try this. Let's see. I was probably the instigator in a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was something that we were interested in, but when it didn't work right away and it didn't seem to yield the results that I was going for as far as reaching that orgasm, I pulled away and wasn't, lost interest in it at the time, because it was frustrating. It was like another avenue that I had tried that didn't work.
Okay. And so let's fast forward a little bit. I guess this, okay, let's talk about the whole story. Why not? How did you find me? How did you find Sunny? And then what started on that journey?
It actually resulted in my husband and I were fighting about our sex life having fallen off again. And I was kind of getting to the point of just being completely frustrated. He enjoys sex, enjoys foreplay, and I got to the point where, to me, foreplay was a waste of time, because it was, the more that he did it, the more shame I felt inside for not, I was disappointing him by not being able to get off. So I was able to just got to the point where I couldn't enjoy it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I started we had talked about hypnosis as a way to try and fix it before in the past, but it just never seemed like the right time, or I never gelled with the people that I was talking to. I just I didn't like their answers. I didn't feel comfortable with them. And so funny enough, I've come across YouTube, this wonderful, invention of information that's out there. And came across, these self-hypnosis, how to orgasm. And it's funny because I ran across yours and, just clicked on it. And I was like, oh, this will work, And I guess, this quick fix generation thing. I'm like, oh, that's all I needed was a YouTube video. So I go to it and I try it, and, it didn't work as far as I felt turned on, but I didn't reach orgasm in that sense. And I was looking through the comments, and somebody was like, it didn't work for me. And you commented about anorgasmia, and I've never actually heard that term, because I think, growing up, they're like, oh, most women just can't orgasm, end of story, blah, which I never accepted, but I never heard of an actual terminology for it. So I messaged, or I sent you an email or messaged you regarding it, and you contacted me back to talk. And then that's kind of how it happened. And then you introduced me to Sunny, and it was just kind of for whatever reason, it felt right. And I just went with my gut with it. I'm probably bad in the sense I didn't do any vetting process other than it just felt right in my gut, and I just went with it.
Mm-hmm. And so what was the...
And,
Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
It was my husband and I were talked about after talking to Sunny and what was involved with the process and, the cost and everything. And he was like, well, we'll try it for a month and see what happens. If it's legitimate, we'll keep going. And, if not, then, lesson learned type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I felt very comfortable talking with Sunny, and, we decided to go for it. And I was obviously at a place in my life where I was willing to just put all of myself into it, because I was just so tired of living this way that I just needed something.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started working together, I was wholly ready for it, where I think 10 years ago, if I had come across this, I might not have been as successful, because I might not have been ready then to face everything.
Mm. And it's interesting you talk about facing things. What was sort of the beginning and the early process like with Sunny? What happened?
Well, it was funny in the sense that when we would talk, we set out the goals of what I wanted and, to achieve orgasm. And then what was really interesting when she was like, well, what do you think that feels like? And that was a really hard question for me to answer because I had no idea. I had no idea what it would feel like. And I honestly could only answer based off what I have like seen in like porn or what I've read in like romance novels of what they consider orgasms to be. Because I had absolutely no idea what it would be or could even fathom it on my own. And so when we discussed it, and she had given me feedback that sounds reasonable, what I was searching for. And but then when we started talking, it was like we weren't talking at all about orgasm. We were talking about relaxation, about that being the cornerstone to being able, like, the foundation that has to be dealt with before even, thinking about orgasm. And it was like a rude awakening that I had to like deal with all these personal issues and stuff that like I had no idea that I would even be discussing in order to get to the point of relaxing to achieve orgasm. And so it ended up being a real introspective process for me.
All right. Well, it's really interesting because you're talking about, well, I'm working with orgasm, which most people would probably consider pretty intimate there. But you said, and I had to talk about all these personal issues, things that I didn't realize that would be part of the process. So,
Yeah.
And so say more about that, maybe.
It ended up being a process of talking more about, I guess, well, it started with, just dealing with meditation. And the idea of meditation to me had always been a joke because I've never been able to quiet my mind for 2 seconds, let alone, even sleeping had always been a problem because it just was like an on-plane, movie or whatever going on in my head constantly, and I could never shut off my brain. So the meditation was kind of scary to start just because it was, I was intimidated by the process because I'd always had a hard time with anything like that on my own. When I started the process and started doing it, where, focusing on my body and like the sensations, any pain or anything that I, just through breathing, all these like emotions would come up. And it was like a flick second of like a memory that I had dealt with in my life of like a past abuse or issue or hurt or something that had happened that I kind of glossed over, based on the way that I was raised of like, we don't talk about things, we just move on. And so I started actually dealing with a lot of past issues that I had never actually addressed and actually feeling the emotion and having to go through that emotion for the first time. And then, and also dealing with vulnerability, which is something I had shied away with from like my entire life because I had always seen it as a weakness. And then like relearning that vulnerability is actually a strength, and then practicing that with my husband. And I would, journal about what I meditated about. And then I would have him read the journals because I wasn't able to verbalize anything with him, which had also been like an issue. And so he would read it and then I would just cry. And so like the first time ever, I'd let him hold me as opposed to pushing him away to deal with it on my own. And so it was weird because like the process itself started dealing with and healing so many other aspects of my life and like my relationship with my husband. And at one point I'm like, are we even ever going to get to the orgasm? I feel like I'm going through like intense psychotherapy, dealing with all these, like everything but that issue. But, I remember one time, Sunny and I had a session and she was like, you relaxed. And it was like, that was an amazing thing because that was one thing nobody ever put with my name, relaxation or relax. I've always been kind of tense, so on the go, like let's very impatient, let's get this done. And so that was really powerful in itself. And I remember this one session where she was like, you trust yourself. And then I just started crying because it like hit like this bell that not only do I not trust other people, I don't even trust myself to take care of me. And then that was a huge, that was a huge moment for me of realization about how closed up I had become from everything. And that through these like protective walls I had created, I was denying myself pleasure as long as like everybody else around me from knowing me. So it was interesting, like especially going back to see my family after I'd been done like 3 months of working with Sunny. But I was amazed at like the reception I got from everybody about how happy that I seemed.
All right. Before we get too much into that, let me just take let me.
That's fine.
Yeah, one little moment here. Sunny, is there stuff coming up that you'd like to say about this part of the journey with her, perhaps?
I'm just so. I'm sitting here crying.
Everybody's
just
crying.
remembering.
Okay.
Well, I'm remembering a lot of what actually remember the session, the 2 different sessions Kate was referencing, and once we identified that relaxation was the core issue to helping her be able to orgasm, we had to deal with all the peripheral and core things that came up around that.
Hey, Kate, you talked about going back to your family and getting a reception. So what was that reception like, or what happened with your relationship with your husband and other people who knew your family as you've been going through this program?
Well, my husband and I mean, we were at a point where we were like in couples counseling because it was not that we were like on the verge of splitting up. We were just, at a point where we were both kind of miserable and had lost. It seemed like we lost the whole team mentality, and we were both kind of separating onto ourselves. And he'd make a comment that I'm an island onto myself, and that it was hard to share anything with me because I had just secluded myself in my emotions and like walled them up in myself. And so through the process, I had to start, sharing with him and opening up with him about all these things. And through that, he got to kind of get to know me on a different level, and would make comments of, I was always really disturbed when you described certain events of your past because you just glossed over it like with rose-colored glasses of just like, oh yeah, it happens to everybody, we just move on or whatever. I never expressed any type of actual like emphatic emotion about anything. And so when I started processing everything, it kind of, it went through a process of him actually seeing me let my guard down and me letting him in, that I trusted him to do that, which gave him some, leeway as far as understanding where I was coming from and being a little bit more patient with me. Now, we also went through a point in the process where he got really mad at me for taking all this time away from him to deal with these issues. A lot of it, with the baby and the way our schedules are, the only time I could do it was during our time together in the evening. So at one point, I did get accused of like being selfish and just doing all this stuff for me. But then when it seemed like the tide kind of turned, and our relationship started strengthening, we started having more intimate connections with each other on a more regular basis that were more meaningful. As far as like, it wasn't even about the frequency of it. It was about the intensity of our intimate time with each other that he was like, oh, okay, you need to start meditating more. It's like, you need to do this on a regular basis. And it actually got to the point where if I started to get frustrated and upset and he could tell that I was having a hard day, he would be like, I'll take the baby, you go upstairs and meditate. And so, which was like, whoa, that was, okay. And he's like, meditated Kate is a much better Kate to be around, So he started like making time and like, actually pushing me to go do it, and would make the comments of, I'd rather have quality time with you than quantitative time with you, because our relationship's so much better when you're doing this. And then my family was kind of polarized in one sense, where, because there were a lot of behaviors that I had just let happen, when I came back, I was able to actually set boundaries that were healthy for me and other people in my family. So there was a little bit of pushback, I would say, with my mom, because she was, used to just getting away with, manipulating and all this stuff. And I was actually standing up to her. So she was kind of a little bit like, I don't know if I like this change. But overall, everybody was like, you are so much happier. There's a light on inside of you, and you just seem so much more secure and, and just stronger, I guess. I mean, it was a big change. And I know that with my husband, especially, like, I got to a point where I felt so alone and isolated from everybody, especially since I'm in Alaska and my family's in the lower 48. And I got my husband back. Like, I got my best friend back. And that was huge, to be able to, where we both had each other again for support, and no longer had a feeling of just being completely isolated from each other.
Wow. And so you mentioned you started a journaling practice, you started a meditation practice, you were doing vulnerability exercises. How long did you work with Sunny to this point?
For 3 months.
Okay, and I guess the question that everybody is wondering now, did you get there or not?
I I did. I actually there was this one time that Sunny had mentioned something about like meditating, about how maybe that I should think about introducing like masturbation into my meditation. And I was like, that could be interesting. And I was like, well, why don't I just up it a notch? And on my own, I was like, how about this? I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to go upstairs and meditate. I'm like, why don't you meet me in about 10 minutes or like 15 minutes? And then, you just join in the act. Or like, I'll just be meditating and you come in, And so he did. And it was insane, because we started having, well, it's like oral sex. And at first I got back into that thing where I started to get tense and upset about it. And then I had to like relax and concentrate on the meditation and calm myself down, and realize that I do trust him. And that, one of the things was like, that came up with all the meditation was, if I trusted myself, why would I think that my body would hurt me? Mm-hmm. That why would I think an orgasm would hurt? If I trusted myself and it was my body, why would my body hurt me in that way? So that was a big thing to let go of, one of the big blocks that I had. And so when I would start to get like to that point, I would just relax and be like, no, I trust myself. I trust my husband, and just focus on the breathing. And it was in that night, I ended up having, my first orgasm, and it was a really crazy experience, as far as I just felt this like energy, kind of like, it was weird, like off the top of my head, my feet, my arms. And then I just started crying, and I was hit with this overwhelming wave of emotion, and my husband just held me and just let me cry until I had to get it all out. And so, and I remember afterwards, journaling and like letting Sunny know that this is what we did. I hope you're not like upset with me, because I went on my own with this, and she was just like, oh my God, that's awesome. And so we kind of just started incorporating that into our sex life, as far as me, meditating and kind of like centering myself to prepare beforehand, in order to help focus my, as far as shutting off everything else in my head and just focusing on the act itself and being in the moment. it's like one of those things where I feel that I'm like, it happened. And I remember talking to Sunny and being like, it was kind of weird. It was just like this emotion. It was like this energy that I felt, and I didn't really know how to process it. So I was like, I think I orgasm. I think that's what I had wanted, but it wasn't like this, crazy euphoria that everybody talks about. And we had talked about how like not every orgasm is that way, and I'm at like the beginning stages of it. And I will say that after experiencing it, I have gotten maybe a little greedy for it. And when my husband and I, have sex, it's just kind of like, okay, let's keep going. I want to do that again. So, and see where, it'll go. Because I feel like I opened the door, I broke down that wall, and I'm on the other side now. But I'm still like at, the first spot, and I have just another journey to start on. Which I'm, my husband and I are very excited to go on this journey together.
So how's your relationship now? How has it been developing now that you are orgasming, having these climax experiences together?
It's kind of one of the things where our sex life is a lot better, as far as we are a lot more intimate and excited about having sex again. And it's one of those things where now if he just comes up and I'm doing the dishes and he hugs me, I don't get mad at him for interrupting me anymore. I'm more accepting of the love, and I can let go and be in the moment with him, as opposed to worrying about everything else that I need to be doing. There are times where I've gotten out of the meditation just because of work and other things, and I have to step back and realize that this is something that I need to do on a regular basis and continue with. I had somebody tell me once, it was like, that was the problem with like optimists, is that once we feel good, we don't want to necessarily focus on all the practices we do to get there, because we're like, oh, I feel good, I'm here, as opposed to being like, well, you gotta keep doing it every day, and you got to continue on that path. So right now I'm finding my way back to meditation and making sure that it is a daily part of my life, because it is something that I need to center myself and to release the stress and not let the stress pile up on me. And my husband and I are kind of going back and exploring the more kinkier side of our relationship, because it's something that we can actually enjoy together now, as opposed to it being like this, a huge pressure on everything that we did to try and to get to the goal of orgasm. And then when it didn't work, to be like, and throw it to the wayside. We're just experiencing everything right now. It's like kids in a candy store. It's like we overhauled, and we had a really grand opening, and we're just having fun with it right now. But I do want to see where I can go with it.
So now you're just exploring life and kink and whatever, just from the perspective of, let's see what's here. And there's no more pressure behind it about, okay, it has to, however, end with this peak experience. Is that right?
Exactly. There's no more like looming expectation of failure, because it can happen. It has happened, and it's like, and it's not even upsetting if I don't get there every time, because it's just this. Now it's just fun again. Now if there's the pressure's just been relieved of having this fear of disappointment from me, or disappointing my husband and being a letdown to him. There's so much guilt and just so much shame that's been alleviated, that it's back to being an enjoyable experience, to where we're like just dating again in that sense.
I have learned a lot from this conversation, and I think you provided such an excellent overview of what it feels like, talking about the guilt and shame of not being able to get to this place. Also, how it begins, which I think is excellent. I lived in a family, you said, where where we just get over things. We don't talk about them. We don't resolve the issues and probably their boundary issues and everything else. The one question that I had for you was, I just wanted to make an observation and see if you have any comments on that. And is, I came looking for orgasm, and I got a lot more than I bargained for. So can you maybe say something to that? Because like you said, well, are we even going to get to orgasm here? You know, what are we doing actually? So.
That was, looking back, it was like, why wouldn't I think that it would touch on all those emotional issues? But going into it, again, having no idea how to get there or what was really preventing me from getting there, it was an eye opener. I didn't realize how interconnected all of these issues were. It's almost like, having like all these strings, the base being my orgasm, and it just interweaves into everything else in my life. And I've got to go and untangle all these other issues in order to reach my goal. And I had no idea how affected everything was, and like how almost like delicate the system was for me anyway, of dealing with all these emotional issues in order to reconnect with my body, because it was like I had just completely separated my mind from my body. Right. And I was living up in my head, and I wasn't feeling or experiencing anything. Truly, I was just responding and reacting. I was just really defensive in a sense, where when something happened, I just took care of it, dealt with it, threw it, put it away, right, and moved on, as opposed to actually allowing myself to feel anything anymore.
Right. So life sounds like it's a lot different for you now.
It is. It's still a learning process, and it's one of those things where when and I was just talking to Sunny about this the other day, it's like I have kind of had felt myself reverting back to old practices as kind of like a comfort zone. And now my body is like revolting against it. And when I find myself, it's like I'm in this like emotional upheaval if I start slipping back, because my body's like, no, we came this far, we're not going back to that way. And so it's kind of interesting, like the red flags that come up when I try and revert back to, even though, and I think it's fascinating that even though I know that they're negative behaviors, I know that it wasn't helping me, it's still a comfort zone. Like the change is still unknown. And even though it's better, it's still it's still kind of scary to go through it, but it's so much better than what I was in before. So it's a practice of consciously deciding to go on this route to take care of myself, which is weird. It's funny because I'm healing myself through orgasm.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I'm going to talk about the program that you've been into and some of the components of it in just a moment. But I think it is important to see how, well, let's say this. Okay, assuming you hadn't found Sunny, where would you be now?
I would probably still be in family counseling, and just, I'd probably be fighting with my husband, like 30 pounds heavier and just miserable.
So you're saying that there's like been a weight effect of this whole program as well, or?
Yes, in the sense that at the same time I started it, I'm kind of known for when I make one change, I make 30. Right. So I did like a complete overhaul of myself. And I think that I wouldn't be continuing the process had I not been meditating and working with Sunny through it. I think that the foundation that she helped lie within me as far as emotionally and the way I mentally view things has strengthened my desire to be healthy and to treat myself emotionally as well as physically in healthier ways than the decisions that I made in the past, where I used to, my husband and I used to drink a lot, and now it's like not necessary to to do that. Or when we do have, a couple glasses of wine, it doesn't go to a nasty place anymore, because both of us are in such a happier place. Because I guess that adage of, you change and the world changes around you. Well, my world definitely has changed around me, from the people that I'm surrounded by, to the way my husband engages with me, to even the way that I interact with my child. I have so much more patience. I feel like I'm centered and grounded, and I don't freak out as much, and I'm not as stressed out about things.
Wow.
So overall, I'm just happier. And it's amazing, because that wasn't, while I did think that at one point that finding the ability to orgasm would create balance in my life, because that was something that was missing. And for some reason, and I can't even tell you why, I just felt in my core that it was necessary in reaching that balance was to fix this issue and to finally address it head on. And it has, in a way that I never thought it would.
Powerful words. Anything else you would tell someone? Well, let's say if you told someone who was where you were, so, maybe married, maybe not, maybe with a child, maybe not, what would you tell them based on your perspective now?
I would definitely, probably the first thing I would say that, somebody would be like, it's okay. It's not your fault, that it's something that, you can achieve, depending on, on how bad you want it. That, it wasn't, in retrospect, it wasn't an easy process, in the sense that there was a lot of emotional work to do.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it was because of my desire for the outcome.
Right.
And the fact that I at the point that I didn't have any other choice. This is where I needed to be. And I think that's also why, through whatever means, I was led to you guys. But there is hope that it can happen, that it's not something where where you are is as good as it's going to get. You have to, one thing I tell people, and I tell people all the time now, anytime somebody tells me anything, I'm like, you need to meditate. Meditating is the key to everything. I'm like, here is Sunny's name. You should contact her. She helps me. And it's not even anorgasmia. Somebody's like, I'm stressed. I'm like, you need to meditate. Meditation is the key, is, kind of my thing right now. But I also tell people, you have to love yourself through the process, because I know that when I wasn't loving myself or trusting myself, I was making a lot of decisions that were based on my self-loathing, and they may have been quick fixes, but they weren't the right steps. They were actually hurting me more in the process. And that now that I'm on this path of actually truly putting myself and my family first, in my health, that the decisions are easy to make as far as what is best for me. And I'm having long-term effects from everything, because I'm doing it from a place of love, as opposed to trying to fix something that I hate about myself from that perspective.
So one thing I'm hearing you say is to somebody else is don't give up, right?
Right. Definitely don't give up. And because there is hope. And that, hell, if I could get there, anybody can, because I'm such a control freak and such a mess. And, I have conversations in my head about conversations I would have with people. I tried to control every aspect and everything that was happening and plan out every outcome. I worked myself into such a frenzy and panic attacks about the whole picture of something that wasn't even happening, of something I had no control over, of something that I couldn't even do anything about. And I would work myself up into a paralyzed state of it. So if I can get to the point of relaxation, I think anybody can get to the point of relaxation. It's just amazing to kind of just be for once, just kind of accept things for what they are. And I'm still an achiever. I still have, goals that I want to achieve. It just, I don't think everything has to be an uphill struggle anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could talk to you for a long time. I really appreciate the wisdom that you've shared and the amazingness of your story. I'm just gonna tell people real quick. Yeah, Isaac says, "Wow, what a revelation this has been. Thank you." And I agree. And Roger says, "Kate, thank you for sharing your experiences so openly and intelligibly."
The journaling in itself has kind of helped reteach me how to communicate with my husband, especially, and other people, that, I'm not afraid by my words anymore, or my feelings. I think especially in such like a PC world, you get to the point where you're afraid to express anything, a fear of retaliation or the way that people are going to react to you. And I got to the point where I didn't communicate about anything.
Right.
So through the process of journaling, has really helped me organize my thoughts and recognize, yes, I actually do feel that way. And I'm okay if somebody doesn't appreciate it, or if they're not okay with it. I'm okay with that. This is, it's no longer about trying to make everybody happy.
Such a powerful place to get to, where my words are okay, my thoughts are okay, and it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks about them, right? All right. I'm just gonna, people are asking the question here, first of all, how to get in touch with Sunny. So I'll give you a link for getting in touch with Sunny, and that's right here. And what I'm also linking to is the program that Kate went through. So she's spoken about meditation. We have a specific type of meditation that I've shared with Sunny, and Sunny is sharing with her clients. We're working very closely on all of this. Also journaling practices that also I instigated with Sunny. And I think 2 weeks ago, she the Unorthodox Dakini webinar, she talked about, it sounded sort of similar to the story we're hearing today about how powerful these things are. And of course, I experienced them before, which is why we're sharing it. We've created an entire program around anorgasmia and overcoming it, and getting rid of this stigma and letting women know that there is a solution. So if you are a therapist or working with people and you'd like more information about doing this with your clients, let me know. Go ahead and contact us also through the link there, and we'll set up an appointment and talk about how you might be able to apply these things to your clients. And if you are a woman who is suffering from not being able to feel the pleasure you want to feel in your life, or other women who might be, please share this with them. And I would be very happy if we eradicated anorgasmia, which is one hunger of the Western woman. Talk about eliminating hunger in the world. Oh, it's just as important. And maybe actually the process of eliminating the hunger that exists in the bellies of so many is eliminating the hunger for pleasure that so many of us are feeling. That you sound, in any case, very motivated, very powerful now. Kate, any final words you want to say, or?
No, other than, thank you to both you and Sunny for, working with me and taking the time to, even just from contacting the first place and telling you where I was, a lot of people would have just been like, sorry, without, taking me on, because it really has changed my life in a lot of ways. And I hope it will, keep continuing to change my life. And I'm excited to see where this journey is going to take me. I do have lofty ideas of where I want to go with it, but I'm really excited, and my husband's very excited about the journey. And my husband thanks both of you as well. He's at work right now, but he's very happy through the process. And I mean, it's created rekindled our marriage and just really put us both in a better place. And so, thank you very much. And thank you for, letting me, share my experiences and through the process.
Thank you. Sunny, would you like to say something to finish?
I don't think I could say anything any better than you or Kate have. I just want to say what an incredible privilege it's been to work with Kate, and to be part of someone changing their life like that is an extraordinary extraordinary blessing.
Absolutely. Have a good
Thank
rest
you.
of your day, everybody. All right. Take care.